right, Monday Morning Quarterback, episode 94, take two. I don't know what's going on with Facebook Live, but 2 weeks in a row, it doesn't pick up our audio the first try. So, figures when I have plenty of time to come in here and prepare and do a nice Monday Morning Quarterback, I have these technical glitches, but when I fly in here 2 minutes before and just wing it, it works fine. So, anyhow, glad you guys could tune in. Different scenery tonight. I had this set up from our shock seminar on Saturday, so figured I'd keep it up for tonight, and then back to the old desk next week probably. So this is one of our shock bays. We have 5 of them here in the shop. So every bay has a custom-built shock bench, Joe's Vices, Rorig shock dyno, computer. Everything gets saved to a remote hard drive. And then what you can't see over here is workbench, toolbox. So everybody's got their tools and stuff they need in each bay. And this is actually T-Bone's bay, so a lot of repairs in this bay. Next one over, we build a lot of new stuff. We have a quarter midget bay, etc. So this is kind of what we got going on here. So shock seminar went great on Saturday. If you weren't able to tune in, I'm in the process of uploading it to YouTube, so pretty large video, and so that'll be up on YouTube. If it's not up while we're doing this, it'll be up shortly thereafter. It was about 60% done last time I looked, so I'll put a link on our Facebook page to that on our YouTube. So it's a couple hours long, but it would be good if you didn't get to see it. A lot of good information. We had a lot of good questions asked during that. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about bump rubbers and bump springs, and of course I'll answer any questions you have as well. We've been big proponents, or say definitely CSI and myself, we've been big proponents of our Progressive kit over the past couple years. I've had a lot of success with it, and still really like the curve that it generates. The downside to it has been its installed height is a little higher than we would like in some applications, and we struggle to get the adequate travel we need. So we've been looking other areas, trying to figure out a way we could make it work with the Progressive kit. A lot of people, or I should say a lot of competitors, have been doing the spring thing, and all the springs that I'd tested, I didn't really like the rates and the travel and installed heights, etc. So we kept kind of pounding away at the Progressive kit and how could we make it work. And really, sprint car stuff, we don't really have an issue. Right rears of our non-wing sprint car or midget, rear of wing sprint cars, but the micro stuff, we seem to not be able to get the travel we need with it in most applications. Some of the cars that have 7-inch shocks on the rear, it's not really an issue, but others we do have an issue. So I went through this morning, just so we were kind of doing it at the same time, put a dummy shock together, and I ran through kind of our 2 most popular current bump rubbers, and then the new spring that we now have on our website. And then I took some measurements, and so I'll show you kind of all that data. But basically we have our traditional foam guy in a cup. It's a 4-rib, but we always usually cut a rib off because it's too tall. So foam in a cup, and that's our soft foam, our 35 durometer. Used to be black, but the problem with the vendors, we had soft, our 35 durometer was black and 55 was black. So there was some confusion there. So these are blue now. And then we also have our Progressive kit, and I did the softest rate of it, because that seems what most people use, especially micro guys. So that's 3 yellow pucks, and then the new, if I can pick it up here, the new Eibach bump spring. Big fan of the spring, this particular spring, because of the way they've built it. It has a lot of travel for softer rates. Typically with the softer rates, they don't have very much travel. This has actually got a lot of travel, as I'll show you. The other nice thing is these retaining cups that they built. They have them for 1/2 inch and 5/8. I don't think they make one for a 9/16, but you could machine out this to have a 9/16 work. But it's got a nice O-ring in there, so it seals really nice on the shock shaft. It's not going to wear your shock shaft, and a pretty light little guy as well. So before we jump into showing you the data that I discovered today, I just want to cover basically why do we need a bump rubber, or why do we need a bump spring to begin with. And typically a bump rubber or a bump spring, it's serving two purposes. It's limiting travel first and foremost. So whether it's this or the spring, it's going to take up a specific distance and it's going to limit travel by that much. Okay, if you don't have this on there and you got 4 inches of shock shaft showing, you can travel 4 inches. You put this on, you got 4 inches of shock travel showing, you're going to maybe travel 2.5 inches. So it's going to limit travel. Why do we want to limit travel? Typically, we'll just use a wing application, for example. On the left rear, if the thing traveled all the way down 4 inches, it's going to reach a point, more than likely, where it's traveled down so far that it's gotten the right rear out of the track. Okay, so it's got so much dynamic tilt in the car, the left side's down so low, the right rear's out of the track. Another thing that can happen is it gets so low that the left rear frame rail drags the track. So that's one reason, is to limit travel. The other is to increase load. In the shock seminar, and again, I encourage you guys to go to our YouTube page once I share that link and check it out. We talked a lot about this, but it's going to be a timing thing, because if this, the challenge has always been, and why we're a fan of the Progressive kit, is if that bump rubber builds rate quicker than the shock has rebound, it's going to just unload right off of it. So before you see the benefit and you start to load that corner, it's just going to become unloaded, and all it did was limit travel, but we didn't see the benefit of the load. Where with the Progressive kit, it builds rate so slow, typically we have enough mechanical leverage in the car by the time it's built that rate that it stays down on it, and there's enough rebound in the shock that we benefit from that load. So that's one of the advantages to the Progressive kit. So what I'm going to pull up here is the spring rates. And so what you're looking at is it's simply a force versus travel graph, okay? So your y-axis is the force, and your x-axis would be the velocity, or excuse me, not velocity, displacement used to shocks. So it's a force versus displacement graph, and your left column, or your y-axis going up and down, is your force, and the x-axis across the bottom, that's your displacement, okay? So the yellow one that you see starting off extremely soft and then ramping up at about 600 thousandths and then going to the moon, that's your Progressive. That's the 3 yellow pucks, and it builds a bunch of rate out high. These were all checked at 1 inch of displacement. I checked a bunch of other rates, but I feel like typically we're traveling them about 1 inch. The red is our soft foam in the cup. And so you'll see that it builds rate fairly quickly. It's pretty linear, and then it starts to build rate a little bit more as the rubber starts to expand and get up against the walls of the cup. And then the blue, the orange, and the gray, those are all Eibach springs. That's a 50, a 75, and a 100 pounds. So you can see they're building whatever spring rate it says, it's building that rate in about 1 inch, and it's pretty linear. So where the 50-pound spring is about the same as the Progressive, up to 350 thousandths of displacement or travel, then the Progressive really starts to ramp up and the spring does not. So kind of a lot to look at there, but as imagined, this guy is real linear, okay? It comes in a soft enough rate though that the linearity might not hurt us because it's soft enough initially that the shock should have enough rebound to control it. Now they do make, I think we have up to 100 pound on our website, as again, this was something we were trying to do for the micros, but if there's enough interest, we'll start carrying some of the other rates. I think they have a 150 and a 200, but they're very linear. And I think for the micro application, now granted the situation we're in, we haven't got to do a ton of testing. I think it's going to work really, really well for the micro guys. And the next thing I'm going to show you is kind of the heights of all of these. And so as you can see, the Eibach bump spring, and this is with the retainers, its installed height is just a little over 2¼ inches. And it's the shortest installed height of all three. Typically 2¼ inches is going to work on almost any application. The other thing that I like about it that I didn't realize when we started testing with these is it actually has the most amount of travel of the three options as well. So you're getting almost 1.5 inches of travel out of that guy, where the Progressive kit, for example, you're just a little over or a little under 1.25 inches on travel, and it's over 1/2 inch taller installed height. So the guy who always said I'm not a big fan of the springs, I think I found a bump spring that I like. The downside to these guys is they are pretty expensive. The wire, I'm told that Eibach's using is a very, very high-end special metal, so they can get that rate with a lot of travel and it hold up. So I'm told that this thing will hold up really, really well. Again, we haven't got it on the racetrack a lot, but I punished it pretty good today on the dyno, and it held up really well. I didn't see any change in freestanding height, but I think they're normally 95 bucks. We have them on sale on our website for 85, and then you buy the little retainers separate. They come in a pair. So that's what I learned today, fooling around on the dyno with testing these three things and doing a little bit of a science project on measuring installed height, compressed height, and what we could get out of these things max travel. So any questions anybody has about anything bump rubber related or anything else, fire away. I'm here to answer your questions, and happy to help. Right next to the air compressor, that startled me. Steve Osborne, since he is pushing the right rear and the track harder, do you think loosening up the car is needed? Typically on a quarter midget, we're going to run a softer spring rate, and that is going to help us, because the softer spring rate and then getting into the bump rubber, now we almost have a dual rate spring scenario where the softer rate helps with the roll, but then when we get into the bump rubber, we're going to load the tire more. So that was kind of the goal with the quarter midget program and the Progressive bump rubber, was to have more of a dual rate spring situation than just loading the tire a lot harder, because typically on a quarter midget, especially the lower powered classes, sorry about that, our air compressor works, the lower horsepowered classes, you will almost get the car too stuck and slow it down. So Eric Long, if the spring's linear, why not just change the torsion bar? So if you change the torsion bar, you have that added rate all of the time. Where with this spring, you're going to have, however you set it up, probably an inch of travel with just the torsion bar before you get into the bump spring. Okay, so again, kind of a dual rate situation where you're not even touching this bump spring for an inch of travel. So that would be why. Kevin, there is a way. I have some of the stuff, but if you ever have a bump spring you want me to test, send it in and I can gladly get you a rate for it. It's pretty easy for us to do to rate those things. So same way we can rate a torsion bar or a coilover spring, we can rate a bump spring for you. So send those in. Now's a good time. We have a little bit of time on our hands. Mike, am I worried about the rebound rate of the spring versus the delay and rebound with your puck stack? I don't think so. In what I've seen, we're going to be substantially softer in rate than the puck at anything over, I'll show you that again. You can see pretty much, even if we run the 100-pound spring, after we get past a half of an inch of travel, we're going to be so much softer in bump rate than we were with the progressive kit that I don't think that's going to be a real issue. So you can see that the yellow graph, the progressive kit, it ramps way up once it gets to about a little over half inch, 550 thousandths. So. Can you soften the right rear bar considerably if you run a stiff bump? Or a bump spring. I don't know that I would say considerably, but our Wink Sprint Car customers, that we have a few that live and die by our progressive kit, and they run it across the back and they're very successful with it. Typically they're going one bar size softer and then sitting on the bump, the progressive bump springs. So I don't know, I'd say considerably, but they are a little softer. On a medium bank track, Steve, I think that 3/4 of an inch bump stop gap is going to be pretty close. PJ's in disguise as a new name, Miguel Adam. PJ, how the heck have you been? We miss seeing your sweet rides. Anybody else have any questions? I apologize for the technical glitch. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to update our OBS. Say that's 2 weeks in a row. Facebook doesn't recognize the audio for some reason. When I'm testing it here, it works. And then when it links to Facebook, you guys can't hear me. If I restart everything, then it works. So I did 92 of these before I had that issue. So I don't think it's me, but it could be. I'm not super tech savvy. All right. Doesn't look like any other questions. PJ's well, good. Hope the rest of you guys are staying healthy, and hope you're staying happy too, because we're all going to get back racing soon. And I look forward to seeing you all at a racetrack soon. I've warned my wife that once we're racing, she might not see me for 6 months or so, because I'm going to go to every single race possible. So thank you guys for all the support. Again, I'll put a link on our Facebook page when the Shock Seminar is available on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube page and share it with your friends. And thanks again for all the support. Have a fantastic week.